let's go ahead and now jump into recently Lance Zierlein of NFL Media, a guy who's been doing this for a long time, friend of the podcast too. We've had him on the show, I think. He dropped his position rankings on NFL.com along with his draft profiles, which I do think are like a really big sign that the draft is starting to heat up. Those draft profiles are loaded with a ton of information, really good scouting terms too. That guy has some scouting terms that are pretty fantastic.
My favorite one a few years ago, if you'll recall, he said Derwin James played through a straw. Sometimes plays through a straw. Still don't know what it means.
I don't know what that means.
I think he tried to explain it once on the NFL. They had him on their NFL podcast, Sam and Steve, and I still don't get what it means. But
I mean, I think that's just like
it's a good term though.
I
plays
like
through
it.
A straw.
I think I'm bored with it. All right, let's jump into these rankings here. Quarterbacks, little chalky, nothing too wild there. He still has the big four, is the same big four. Not a Chris Sims situation where he's kind of going off the beaten path. Mm-hmm. But where'd you see some notables in the running back rankings?
Yeah, so running backs, I think there's a tier of the top three people have come around on. In some order, you're going to see Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, and Javonte Williams as your top three. Then he has Trey Sermon, the Ohio State back, as RB4. And I like Trey Sermon a lot. Not RB4 for us. That is the highest I've seen anyone have Trey Sermon. But he's got a very NFL projectable skill set, I will say, Sermon. Like, you feel good about him once he gets to the NFL. He kind of reminds me of a Zach Moss, though, in that regard. And that's like, you feel good about him. You don't feel exceptional about him. Like, you're never going to be – that guy's never going to get you too excited at the next level. But I think that's kind of this running back class after that top three. It's going to be – those are the three you want. Like, last year there was a tier of – we were saying like 5 or 6 that you wanted. This year it's a tier of 3. We want to be the guy. If you really need a running back, draft the last one of that top tier of 3.
And do you think ultimately we're going to see – I know there's some people who like the draft prop that Javonte Williams, the UNC running back, will be the first running back off the board.
It's like plus 400.
Yeah. Do you think he has a legitimate chance to go number 1 over all the running backs?
Yeah, because I don't think – well, one, he's a lot younger than the other guys. I think teams will factor that in, the mileage sort of thing. Teams don't want guys with a ton of carries on their body, and Javonte Williams has obviously the fewest of those top 3. He's only a true junior coming out. And teams also don't really care about – basically the hype. Teams are going to do their own scouting. They don't care that you were, the biggest name in college football for the last 2 years, like Etienne and Najee Harris. If your tape this past year was the best tape, and honestly, it's hard to argue against Javonte Williams. That's why he's RB2 for us. His tape was exceptional this past year, so I could see him come off the board first. All
right, let's jump to now Lance Zierlein's wide receiver rankings. What kind of blew you away here?
So, 2 big things here. I think that he has the top 3 as the top 3. They're the same. He has Devontae Smith at 1. Like I said, those 3, put them in anywhere you want. Just draft one of them. That being Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle. But go down a little bit more. He is low on Rashad Bateman. He has Nico Collins from Michigan, who opted out this past year above Rashad Bateman, which, I can't get on board with that one. But then he kind of wins me back by having K. Johnson, the South Dakota State wide receiver 10. Thought we were the only ones high on K. Johnson, but he's in the same tier as us in terms of how high he is on your boy.
Dude, K. Johnson love. We can't. I mean, talk to for those who don't know about K. Johnson, South Dakota State wide receiver. What do you like about his game?
He had the highest grade in the one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl during the week of practices of any wide receiver there. Now, that's not end all be all. That's like 15 reps. But if you're getting open against future NFL corners, that's usually a good thing when you can do that. Ridiculously productive on tape. Obviously, over 1,200 yards each for his past 2 seasons. Had to opt out this past year. But what I love, the biggest thing with me, is his suddenness and the way he just gets off the line of scrimmage and can play through contact. At Senior Bowl, there was a rep against a safety. Off the top of my head, I can't remember exactly who it is. But it
was Christian Uphoff.
Like 5 yards off coverage, and he gets chucked like wholesale, just hammers him. But then K. Johnson still gets on top of him and stacks him. Gets right through it, barely loses any speed. A lot of the smaller slot-type wide receivers, you worry about those guys having to play through contact in the NFL, having to avoid linebackers, and then still being able to get into their routes. I don't worry about the K. Johnson from what I saw on his tape. Now, catch radius is a real concern. Shrimps there's a reason they look a lot cooler in college than they do in the NFL oftentimes. It's because it is more difficult to hit a guy who is 5'10", like K. Johnson, than it is a guy 6'2". It just is.
Yeah.
Those guys are higher to begin with. Those guys just have a bigger catch radius. That just is a thing that matters, especially over the middle of the field. So that's going to be his biggest weakness, but as a route runner, his ability to get open, he's very good.
Some other notables from Lance Zierlein's wide receiver rankings. Like you said, he's low on Rashad Bateman, has guys like Tylen Wallace and Nico Collins ahead of Rashad Bateman, but he's also low on Rondale Moore. He's got Josh Palmer and Demetric Felton over Rondale Moore, looking a little bit further down the list.
Rondale Moore's 2020 tape was not good compared to his years past. Just scrap that. Throw it out the window. He had whatever injury. Was it a hamstring that he had, nursing? Then he came in, he looked over. He looked out of shape, to be honest. Was not as fast. 2020 tape, not great. 2019 tape, his athletic testing, that's the guy we saw. That's the guy I'm banking on getting at the next level, not the guy we saw in 2020.
Some other names here that I think we've mentioned a ton on this podcast that are a little bit higher in our rankings that he is lower on. It looks like he's got Austin Watkins, Dwayne Eskridge, Frank Darby ahead of guys like Tutu Atwell.
We're not high on Atwell.
We're not high on Atwell either, I guess. But Jalen Darden's below Seth Williams on this list. I mean, he's very low on.
And that's just opposite ends of the catch radius spectrum.
Yeah.
And Darden's a guy who's again, he's going to look a lot cooler in college than he is in the NFL because the windows are tighter down the field than the NFL. You don't have that space to work with at the second level oftentimes, behind the linebackers in front of safeties. You have to be able to, one, play through contact there, and two, haul in off target passes, because when you sit down in a zone, a lot of times you got to be on the same page as your quarterback, and the guys who can adjust better give you a better window for your quarterback. At his size, is he ever going to be able to adjust to those passes? I don't know. Maybe not. But still, he just offers a little bit more athletic, a lot more athletically than Seth Williams. I think Seth Williams is kind of limited.
Going to his offensive tackle rankings, I find this, he and now Daniel Jeremiah are big on Rashawn Slater as the top offensive tackle in this class. By a hair, though.
Yeah, but it's by a hair.
They have a quantitative measurement for their grade, their draft grade, 6.74 for Rashawn Slater, 6.73 for Penei Sewell, and then there's a relatively significant drop-off to Christian Darrisaw as his third favorite offensive tackle or third-ranked offensive tackle. Tevin Jenkins comes at 4. What I found interesting is third best interior offensive lineman, according to Lance Zierlein, Quinn Miners, Wisconsin Whitewater. That is really impressive. Coming into the Senior Bowl, that guy has made himself some money.
Oh, yeah.
And his pro day was insane. He had a really good pro day. 320 pounds, and his numbers were pretty comparable to Tristan Wirfs. Not enough. I mean, I don't think enough people were talking about his pro day. Everyone and their mother was talking about his Senior Bowl, but his pro day was legit. Oh shit.
Yeah, his pro day was basically the icing on the cake of, hey, this is real. I'm not just a nice storyline here. I am basically Ali Marpet level of prospect coming out. Ali Marpet, great Senior Bowl, but then solidified it when he goes to his pro day and tests out like a freak athlete. That's Quinn Miners, great Senior Bowl, solidifies it when he goes to because that's, whatever you want to say, that still has value, athletic testing in terms of leveling the playing field. When you don't get a level playing field, when you're seeing this guy go on tape against guys who aren't going to be playing in the NFL. So I think that's a big W for him, and I would be, like you always say, interior offensive lineman 3 in his rankings.
Yeah.
It wouldn't surprise me that's how it plays out come draft time.
You think he goes as high as the second round?
Yeah, I do. And that's where Marpet went. I would not be surprised at all.
Dude, that would be a hell of a jump for Quinn Miners. Some other notables here on his offensive tackle rankings. He has Liam Eichenberg of Notre Dame, Stone Forsythe of Florida, who actually grades really well in PFF system. He's one of the highest graded pass protectors on true pass sets this past year. Then Alex Leatherwood over guys that we like a ton, Dylan Radins of North Dakota State, Sam Cosme of Texas, and even then Jackson Carman a little bit further down. He has him listed as a guard. We haven't talked at all really about Stone Forsythe. What's your opinion of his game?
I mean, he's a high cut dude, listed at 6'9", but he can move for a guy that tall. Kind of reminds me, but not necessarily powerful. Leatherwood's a much more physically imposing offensive tackle. So that one's kind of more in the eye of the beholder. I think Forsythe could profile better to pass protection, though, at the NFL level if it needs to get a little stronger.
Gotcha. All right, let's now jump to his defensive ranks here. I'm going to go to the defensive line. I think it's interesting that he has edge 1, Jason Oweh of Penn State. I was going to think that PFF would be the highest on Jason Oweh because his pass rushing grades and stuff are good. His sack numbers aren't great at all. He barely had any sacks at Penn State, but he graded well in bits, specifically on true pass sets, and also is a freaky athlete with that explosiveness and that burst. Lance Zierlein, edge 1, Jason Oweh, Penn State.
He also, though, sees them very similar in his grades, where there's all those guys are almost in the exact same grade.
Yeah, true.
Tier. They're all super close in his rankings, and that's how That's how it is in this year's class. Like, that just is what these guys are. No one really has anything that separates themselves. Like, Azeez Ojulari has the best probably on-field tape and performance, but then he is a unique rusher and a unique case and profiling to the NFL and what he brings to the table, whereas the other guys are like always built in the fucking lab.
Mm-hmm.
And he also he graded out fairly well.
Yeah,
like, in terms of just,
specifically
like,
against run. You talk about his run defense grade improving this past year. I think that's a big testament to his ability. I wanted to speak to how close they were in his rankings real quick. Jason Oweh in his quantitative measurement, 6.44. Then he has Azeez Ojulari of Georgia at 6.42. Kwity Paye of Michigan at 6.4. Gregory Rousseau at 6.39. And then Jalen Phillips at 6.37. All like within, 0.06 or 0.08 grading points. Like, that's what this edge class is. Pick your flavor, but also pick them early, because you're not going to find freaks like those 5 guys after the first round. You're not.
Yeah. See, I just I prefer Paye and Oweh because, one, they truly are out of this world level athletes. Like, not every year sort of athletes in terms of what they bring to the table. And then, two, like, we've seen the upward progression they have, and they have, valid excuses for why they didn't perform as much on the football field. Paye coming from small school, high school football, where he played running back, then going to Michigan and playing defensive line. Oweh literally only starting playing football in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Those are legitimately why you would be raw, and then to see them progress the way they have throughout their college careers. Yeah, none of these. I don't think any of these guys are going to hit the ground running. No one's going to be Chase Young from day one. But what am I banking on? Who do I want 3 years from now is basically what I'm drafting in this edge class. I want the guys who are ridiculous freaks who have improved every single year.
Something also pretty notable about his edge rankings, he's really high on Charles Snowden, 6.22 in his grading. That's high. We are significantly lower on Charles Snowden, but I want to move to defensive tackle. He is one of the few draft analysts that actually view the defensive tackle class like we do, and that Christian Barmore is an arm and a leg better than any other defensive tackle in this class. Right now, he's the number 1 ranked defensive lineman at 6.7. For perspective, his top edge, Jason Oweh, is 6.44. And then you don't see a defensive tackle until Levi Muzurike further down the list at 6.31. It's Christian Barmore and then everybody else.
Yeah, everyone shits on this defensive tackle class, but Barmore is, in my opinion, as good a prospect as Kinlaw and Brown were coming out last year. Wow. His tape this past year was better than any other defensive lineman in college football. It was the best. It was better than any of these edge guys. Now, he's not as freaky as Oweh or like some of these edge guys, but he is a darn good athlete in his own right and a very flexible 315-pounder with his ability to play with leverage at his size. So I think Christian Barmore, I don't want to say getting slept on, but Zierlein sees it in a similar way that we see it, and that this guy's a darn good player. He is the best defensive lineman on tape right now in this draft class, and that because the rest of the DTs suck. If you're gonna draft one, I think I had him going to the Titans in the first round of my latest mock draft today.
With Jeffrey Simmons, I kind of like that.
Which they obviously wanted to build through their trenches defensively and kind of just skirted their entire secondary. I think someone's going to draft him top 20 to 25 picks in this year's draft.
All right, jumping to linebacker now. Bar none. By the way, I meant to make this pun. Bar none. Barmore. I don't know what the fuck I was going to say.
Is there more to that?
I think that's all I had.
Anyway, I'm going to just workshop that one. You probably shouldn't have just dropped it right there.
Oh my God. This is why we're not sponsorable. Linebacker. I found this interesting. So his top linebacker is Micah Parsons with a 6.89 grade. And then Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is right after him. And I've seen him comment on Twitter a handful of times to people about how much he really does like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But then there's a significant drop-off after Parsons at 6.89 and Owusu-Koramoah at 6.82 to Zaven Collins in the 6.3 range, Nick Bolton in the 6.3 range, and then Jabril Cox at 6.26. Do you see a similar drop-off between those talents?
Shit, I really wasn't listening. I was trying to come up with a pun for the Barmore thing.
Jesus Christ.
I was workshopping something like, now that COVID's gone, you're going to want the Barmore.
You need to go. You need to leave. That was worse than mine.
Good thing we have 3 more pods this week. You guys got 3 more cracks at this.
This is just an absolute
shelve
atrocity.
it for today. Yeah, shelve it for today, and we'll come back tomorrow.
I'm glad you spoke up, Quinn, by the way, because it was a good opportunity to bring this up. Kenny Galladay signs with the New York Giants. You owe us a bottle of salts here.
I do. I told you guys before the pod that it's on the way.
Let's go.
100 count.
I also, for the salt today, I went both nostrils at the same time. Usually I isolate a nostril. The double nost is is a bold move.
I hit one and then the other.
Yeah, I think I should have done that because I was kind of seeing stars for a little bit. But anyway, what my question was before you're workshopping a garbage pun, Micah Parsons, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, according to Lance Zierlein, are like the top 2 linebackers in this class at 6.89 and 6.82. Yeah. Okay. Then there's this significant drop-off to Zaven Collins, Bolton, and Jabril Cox. Do you see it similarly?
I do. Now, I think Bolton will be a very good NFL linebacker. I don't think he'll ever be close to the Bobby Wagner, that tier, where is like the difference maker tier. It's kind of like at tight end, there's that tier of 3. Linebacker, there's probably a tier of like 4 or 5 at this point of guys who are like, they move the needle no matter what scheme, no matter where they are. Coverage and against the run. Like, those guys are good. I don't think Bolton's ever going to be in that tier, but I think you're going to get a really solid linebacker for the next, however long he's playing. Like, he is a guy that can execute against in coverage and against the run at the NFL level, just may not give you that high-end play. So I do see it similarly where those are the 2 guys. If you want one that's going to be an all-around everything elite tier of linebacker, Owusu-Koramoah or Parsons are the 2 guys I see being able to reach that tier in this class.
All right, I'm going to jump to defensive backs now, which I find interesting. He has Patrick Surtain as his number 1 corner at a 7.02 grade. Rarely see prospects in that 7 range. And then a massive drop-off, over a 0.5 grading points drop-off to J.C. Horn as his cornerback 2, and then Caleb Farley as his cornerback 3, Newsome, then Tyson Campbell. Those are his top 5 cornerbacks and his top 5 defensive backs in this class. Yeah. Reactions to that?
He sees Surtain in rarefied area. I mean, that's a top 5 prospect for him in the class.
Yeah.
That's a Pro Bowl grade he's given him.
See if he's got any good scouting.
Doesn't have anyone else close to that tier, which is interesting. I think a lot of people have seen this top group of cornerbacks as almost a tier of 3 in the J.C. Horn, Caleb Farley, and Patrick Surtain, and that it's kind of pick your flavor based on the scheme you want to run, where you want this guy to play in your defense, sort of thing. He's basically saying, hey, Surtain, and if you want a cornerback, it's going to be him. That's the guy you want in this class. I don't necessarily agree, but I do think I kind of see Surtain as that super high floor guy. He is going to be a solid NFL cornerback, and I think that still obviously has a ton of value. So I do really like Surtain's game. I'm not knocking him whatsoever. I think he's like 12th on our board. So.
Oh yeah, not at all. Yeah, Surtain's still very talented.
But I don't see that gap that he does.
Gotcha. And then I wanted to speak to the safety rankings that he did have. I'm scrolling up here a little bit. He had Trayvon Moehrig as his number 1 safety, as we do, but there's not that big of a gap. We see a pretty significant gap between Trayvon Moehrig and the next best safety. He has Jamar Johnson of Indiana as his safety 2 at 6.30, and Trayvon Moehrig is his safety 1 at 6.35.
Or Elijah Molden.
Elijah Molden
because we call him Elijah Molden the safety, which he lists him at corner. He's never going to play outside corner. So that a slot corner for us is more akin to safety, but he's kind of got they're all jumbled up here with Javon Holland as well in that mix, and Divine Diablo not too far off either.
I'd love 2 names here that he has ranked considerably highly that we haven't talked about a ton on this podcast. Jamar Johnson of Indiana, his safety 2, and then Shakur Brown, the outside cornerback for Michigan State.
I still got to get Jamar Johnson's tape this week. We're going to watch him for the Monday. He'll be one of the last guys. Still have to hit safeties, my last position.
That's your last position?
Monday, new draft guide drops. So we'll see about Jamar Johnson.
Oh, man. Are you ready for the new draft guide? New draft guide.
Final.
300 profiles. Final one.
Draft guide.
It's going to be sick. Pro day information.
Team pages.
You've been grinding. It's been a grind to get that up.